superhero novels when we're done, right? Okay, great. Who's here is familiar with comic books? Awesome. Okay. Who here likes comic books? Okay. Who here likes Marvel?
Yes.
Who here likes DC? Okay. All the DC folks leave.
I'm waiting for Image.
Oh yeah,
I'm just saying,
well.
because
Are we
Invincible's the greatest
unionizing
ever.
with Image? Are we unionizing with them? Is that
I'll do
what we're
whatever
doing?
they
Okay,
want me to
so if you guys don't know who these folks are, let me introduce them. Okay, because in the world of superhero fiction, there are a lot of superhero authors, but there are very few who actually make money at it. And oh my gosh, I have to mention somebody who's here right now. I'm sorry, you're gonna kill me. Ladies and gentlemen, Larry Correa, bestselling New York Times author, super nice guy, and has an awesome wife. So, having said that, having said that, let me introduce these fine folks. We got Marion G. Harmon, and I forgot, Marion or George, do you prefer?
Marion.
Marion G. Harmon of Wearing the Cape. Marion, pop open your thing. And these are yours to keep. If you have not seen this book on Amazon, you have not been looking at superhero novels. He first started in 2011, and he was the pioneer of independent superhero fiction. Wearing the Cape is the blueprint that everybody else followed afterwards.
There's no category for him.
There wasn't. The superhero category on Amazon was created for Wearing the Cape, and they're really good books. You should read them.
It is now inhabited by vampire
Here I got started, it was all bare-chested bear shifters, and I'm just like, for the love, people.
How'd you get pictures of me?
Yeah, right? I have no idea. And then next we've got Bryan Cohen. If you don't know who Bryan Cohen is, you also have not been paying attention. He is not only a superhero author who did a really great superhero series, he also is the master of blurbs and selling on Amazon. Bryan, go ahead and open your book. And he does a podcast, yes.
He's pretty little, though. I mean, I'm just joking. Nice.
That is his book. I highly recommend it.
short.
It's only because you're standing next to a giant man. So Dark Souls is awesome. I recommend everybody to read it. Next we got CC Ekke. Charles is probably, of everybody up here, Charles is probably the most knowledgeable in comic books. I first met him in 2018, and we started talking at the atrium, and we did not stop until like 5 in the morning, and we drove everybody away, and we started discussing X-Men 237 versus Avengers 391. So, you know, that's how it goes. Charles, go ahead. He wrote an awesome superhero novel that he read by me before he published it, which I really appreciated, and I got a chance to read it called Age of Heroes. You will not find a better guy to write like the super-powered Superman-style superhero who is conflicted than Charles. He does a great job. Swears a little bit more than I do.
A little bit. We've been.
And then we got Rachel Aukes. Rachel, of all the panelists up here, has really got a career going on Wattpad with her superhero stories, and I believe, Judgemental, Wattpad is looking at your story for something more than just print, right?
Yes. Yep.
And so you're also super knowledgeable about comic books. I knew her for 6 months, and Charles and I were talking about comic book once, and she's like, well, I think, and we're like, where have you been?
Like, just doing this?
So Rachel is pretty amazing. She's also a pilot in real life, so great person to talk to.
up here really fly.
My head's
Yeah.
in the clouds. Yeah.
And finally, we got Jaime Castle, otherwise known as Steve Boyer from 20Books. Jamie?
Hey.
So another brilliant superhero author who read his book by me first.
Yes, I did.
Raptors is so cool. It's like basically if Peter Parker was a sidekick to Batman. And it is really awesome. It's totally worth reading. You guys should check it out. Everybody up here I would consider an expert in the field of superheroes and comic books. So we're not going to ask any basic questions today, okay? No, what do you think is the superhero genre? If you can't figure that out, we can't help you. So, we got some great questions coming up, and listening.
Thank you.
What do you
Thank you,
get
Jeffrey.
in your
Oh, right, me. I forgot. I'm so busy shilling everybody else.
I'll draw you a little bit.
So selfless.
All right.
Jeff did not run this by any of us.
No,
No,
yeah.
I just really wanted to have a panel that was memorable with people who are happy to be here and come back next year. So this is my book series, Arsenal of Full Metal Superhero. There are 9 of them, and I've got 5 in the Wraith Superhero by Night series, which is Arsenal is Tony Stark meets a disabled girl who is not an alcoholic or a womanizer, and is trying to solve the world's, trying to find her parents who were kidnapped by superheroes at some point. And then the Wraith is probably my favorite of the 2, just because you're all about to chuckle. The Wraith is if Batman and Punisher had a baby raised by John Wick. There we go.
And I'll tell you this, I would definitely recommend both of those series. He's a fantastic writer. And so I definitely would recommend, if you're looking for great, good superhero fiction, whether it be wholesome with Arsenal,
that money.
or just
Complete hard.
or to be badass, like definitely look at his series. They're both fantastic.
So I want everybody, before we get started, give everybody a hand up here. They're all great. I have some questions for you guys. Now, I'm not going to ask, we only have a little amount of time, and Craig told me that if I did take questions from the audience, he would never let me come again. So, we're not going to have questions for everybody all the time. Where are my questions? Technology, my thing. Okay. So, I'm going to open this up to anybody who wants to answer. What is the one thing you would tell an aspiring writer who wanted to write superheroes, and what is something they should never do?
Okay.
Charles Lynn?
You want to be passionate about it. If you're writing, don't be embarrassed by the genre. Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And just like, it doesn't have to be like everyone. Also do your research. Like look at like, hey, okay, what do the covers look like? What is really selling? What is it about certain books? Doesn't mean copy what the book is doing, but it's like find something that you love in the superhero fiction or comic book genre. A character template, an archetype, an arc, and just put your original spin on it. And just make it fun. Have fun, because if you're having fun, it will come through on the page. So.
Thank you, Charles. Rachel?
I would say the biggest thing is making your heroes human. Focus on their human elements, because what makes Spider-Man so cool isn't so much that his power, and then he's bit by a radioactive spider, but he's an everyman. He's one of us, and so we can really resonate with him. As for what not to do, similar to Charles's vein, as tropes are cool. People love tropes, but be sure to give it your own spin, make it fresh and original. And then for the love of God, don't do what Marvel did and screw up Taskmaster.
Oh my God.
She is really salty about that.
Wait, does that mean everyone could use Taskmaster
Yeah.
in public
Yeah,
domain?
just
Don't screw up Taskmaster. You put it in. You put it in.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would add, if the only thing you know about superheroes is tropes, you're in the wrong place.
This is true.
Tropes are the beginning of knowledge, not the end. You have to know why the tropes exist
So you
and
can break
why
them.
they happen in order to really get behind what they're for. Because otherwise you're just derivative of everybody else, and that's a smaller and smaller and smaller circle, and you want to be outside that. Jamie?
Yeah, what Charles said as far as don't be embarrassed by it, something that I find really often, and I think I've read everybody's up here, so I don't know that I'm standing on anybody's toes here. One thing that I tend to get frustrated, I listen to and read a lot of superhero fiction, and the idea that we have to change something to make them cool again really frustrates me. Like, for instance, all superheroes are evil. It's actually not a new thing anymore. Everyone's done this. Everyone from Brandon Sanderson to The Boys has done this. It still could be cool if you do it, but don't go into it thinking that like that's the reason people are going to read it. I wrote a series. Honestly, he said it's if Spider-Man was Batman's sidekick. We say if Peter Parker was Robin, right? Same kind of thing. It's Tim Drake. Raptors on the surface is the same story you've read in the comics since the 1950s. But we did it in such a way that we hoped that the Marvel and DC fandom would go, God, I wish there were more novels from Marvel and DC. And then we spun it on its head a little bit, but don't be afraid to tell the story that you wish you got to hear from Marvel. I've read so many Marvel novels and I've walked away going, that didn't even feel like a Marvel novel. It felt like somebody wrote a thriller and then slapped Spider-Man's name on it. And it didn't even really matter that he was Spider-Man. He didn't use any of his powers to achieve the goals that were there. So don't be afraid to just write that thing that you wish you could have read your whole life. Get them in comics. We don't get them in novels.
And that's the thing. That's what J.R.R. Tolkien did. when he was doing Lord of the Rings and doing The Hobbit, he wrote a novel that he would like to read. And that's what you guys also
he would
do.
like to speak.
Yeah, exactly, like to speak, exactly. And that's kind of what I did with my series. Like the starting premise is like, I had this idea of like, what if you had a movie that you showed the origin of Superman, where he wasn't a sad sack and depressed, like you showed his life, and then you also showed the origin of Lex Luthor. They don't know each other, they didn't grow up in Smallville together, but it's like they're eventually on a collision course. And so that's kind of how I had it. It's like you have the hero story, and you have the villain story.
And it works because you like Grayson so much, which is the villain, so much in the book, that when I found out he was the villain of the series, I was like, no!
And nothing's new, right? Like,
Nothing new.
There's no new superhero. I've spent hours of my life trying to come up with a new superhero just to find out that there's already someone who uses math. I'm like, what? I thought that there's no way that's possible. And someone already did it. I'm like, forget it.
Oh, what's his name?
I can't remember.
The calculator.
The calculator, yeah.
That's actually, yes, that's not the only one either. Here we go.
Going off of what he said, my main character is the most vanilla hero you'll find. She's basically a less powerful Supergirl without all the fancy stuff. And that's it. So originality is overrated when it comes to coming up with power.
Characters, man. We just want characters.
It's all about characters. But I would also say that you have to make sure that you understand what the genre elements actually are.
Yes.
A superhero genre is not like most other genres. You can have thriller genres that are in any era. They can have any kind of people involved. A superhero genre is more like a Western. It's got certain elements that if it's not there, it's not a superhero story. It can be a fantastic story. It's not superheroes. You got to have the persona. They may or may not have powers. They need to be actively involved in some pro-social goal, quest, what have you. But most of us, we know it when we see a superhero book and go, like you said, the Spiderman one, where it's like, that isn't, no. Okay, so you don't try and fool the reader. You don't deconstruct it without putting it back together and having it recognizably be superheroic.
Absolutely.
Very
Thank you. That's great. That's a good point.
And I'll say something.
Okay, Brian.
So this follows up on your point because being able to tap into the superhero story elements, but the unique angle can sometimes not be this weird plot point that isn't in any superhero novel. It can be the theme. It can be what you care about and infusing that into why the character does what they do, why you wrote this story in the first place. It can be the theme of family. It can be the theme of love. It can be different themes baked into it rather than, I need to throw in these three, romantic triangle, love triangle. I don't even know why I said romantic triangle. Let's just flip everything. Yeah, love quadrangle. So, throwing in things that are
That's the wrong panel, Brian.
Well, there is a lot of terror in the superhero category.
That's not superhero.
So,
Let's go back to Marion's point about having to have certain elements. Not all fit in that.
what I'm saying is, if those elements, if you're thinking, I really want to write this scene, you can also use that as your theme rather than trying to pack everything into one particular book.
And another thing too,
Run question one. Question one, ladies and gentlemen.
That's the question we're getting to today.
It's a
but
good question.
I think most importantly is it's fun to have all the tropes, the settings, and whatnot. But the thing that matters most is the character. Why should we root for them? Why should we care about them? And it's not just kind of having a list of traumas and a list of bad stuff that's happened to them. It's like we need a reason to root for this character, whether they're out of costume or they're in costume. Like, what is their goal? What is their objective? Is it just truth, justice, and the American way? We can still say that.
No.
Or is it like, is there something?
World or
We're kind of like with Arsenal, where her initial thing was she became a superhero because she wanted to find her parents. She wanted to find out what happened. What was the mystery behind her parents? And then what ended up happening is that she ended up becoming a legit superhero because there are people gathered around her. She ended up making a team better. And so it's kind of like, what is the microcosm in terms of their goal, and how can it become the macrocosm? So,
Thank you, guys. All the great answers. I would add, and this is important for any genre, each and every one of us up here are successful because we know what our audience wants. And our audience wants superheroes. They don't want supervillains. They don't want people without powers in a world of superheroes. No. That's vigilante. That's different. Vigilante's different. I have a vigilante. It's different.
He's just an anti.
What I mean is, I can't tell you how many times I have been pitched a story of, well, he's a reporter in a world of superheroes, and he has to investigate the superheroes. And I'm like,
Didn't Todd McFarlane try to do that with Spawn?
he did.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So if you've got a vigilante with a shotgun in a world of superheroes, and he's bringing the pain, Roach, that's fine. That's great. Do that. But you know, it's got to be superheroes to its heart. You know, and we all love the Punisher. We all love Batman. They're superheroes. They're vigilantes, but they're also superheroes and exist in a world of superheroes. All right. So bear that in mind. All right. So next question. And I'm going to shoot this one, I think, at Jamie or Steve.
Whatever you want.
All right.
I am actually.
Bob.
Yeah, Bob.
What has been the most? Okay, so you guys may not know this, but Steve also published several anthologies of superheroes. He went out and he got all the good superhero authors, and somehow my email got lost or something because I wasn't on these anthologies, and published a couple anthologies of superhero stuff. So he's 5, and I'm not on any of them.
Yeah.
All right. What has been the most unexpected thing about becoming a superhero author?
Having a successful series, because this might be one of the most difficult genres on the planet. And I will say one of the reasons someone hinted at, I think it was Marion, the superhero categories are so inundated with lit RPG, etc., that visibility is the only way to sell a book on Amazon, right? And if you are writing superhero fiction, but you can't get superhero buyers to know that your book exists, you're never going to sell your book. So there has to be that initial, like, how do I get this in front of readers? How do I hit that top 100? I have the benefit of owning a publishing company, so we know how to sell books. We also made some just really good decisions on audio sides of things and stuff like that. But honestly, walking into it, I remember having a conversation with you in 2018 when I didn't know you at the time. As a matter of fact, if you look at my superhero anthologies, you'll find that most of those authors had never written a superhero book in their life. They were just authors that I knew, and now about 15 of them have gone on to write superhero fiction, and sort of that inspired them to go out and do that, which is actually my greatest, like in my mind, one of the greatest achievements that anthology series had was unlocking a passion that a bunch of authors didn't know they had for writing superhero fiction.
Awesome.
Don't know
Thank
if I
you,
answered
sir.
it.
You did. What about you, Charles? What is the one thing? What has been the most unexpected thing about becoming a superhero author?
Yeah, I echo what Jamie Steve says. I basically felt that it was like, I did realize when I started really doing research, I was just like, wow, this is going to be a difficult sell, even though I was very passionate about it. But I was also really taken aback by the response from readers. Like, that was really, really like, wow, this is really kind of hitting something. You know, it got probably better responses than my other series, which was Space Opera, which is a bigger genre. But it just, I think it's like when you have your readers, when you're able to find your readers, take care of them, make sure you keep in contact with them. Don't just see them as like selling vehicles, as dollar signs. See them as people. And I think also give them what they need, not necessarily what they want. You can give them what they want here and there, but give them what they need, because if you always give them what they want, it becomes like fan fiction. So make sure you give them what they need, and make sure it still serves the story, but it's still an entertaining story.
Thank you, Charles. That's great. What about you, Marion? What do you think is the most unexpected thing about being a superhero author?
Actually, the fact that it happened at all. When I put out Wearing the Cape was because I had sent it out to a bunch of publishers and none of them knew how to market it, so they didn't pick it up. At least that's what I tell myself. It was obviously good enough. I got tired of rewriting it, so I said, well, I'll just put it up on Kindle, and that way I can't rewrite it anymore because it'll be out there and I can't change it, which you can do actually. But, and I put it out for 99 cents a book. And that was April of 2011. And by Christmas 2011, I was selling it for $4.99 a book. And the second book had come out, and I knew I wasn't going to go back to a day job after that, because then it went up to $5.99, $6.99, $7.99.
I remember
right there. So it really kind of exploded, and I think the reason why is because we talked about how you can't see it anymore, but people out there are looking for this stuff, and hardly anybody at that time was doing something that wasn't Marvel or DC. And even though it's still exploded now, and there's a lot more authors out there, obviously, there's a lot more for quality, and there's a lot more chance of getting good exposure than you have writing a vampire story or writing yet another epic fantasy, which are good, but there's so many that it's a huge ocean out there, and it really is still a small pond. So people will find the good stuff.
Absolutely, and there are people looking for good superhero novels. So that's why the cover is so important. It shouldn't look like a comic book, but it should be unmistakably superhero. How about you, Brian? What do you think the most unexpected thing about writing a superhero novel series was?
Well, I think when you go into it, you sometimes think, well, I'm probably the demographic for this book. Like, a lot of guys read comic books, it's going to be all guys, and then it's like the majority of the people on my email list are women, and they love the book, and I just thought that was awesome that I thought, oh, it's going to be this tiny particular group of people that I have in mind, but you don't know. There's going to be 70-year-old grandmothers reading your superhero novels because they love it and it's their favorite, and you shouldn't just assume it's going to be a particular person that you have in mind.
So you have all these women on your email list. What does your wife think of that?
No comment.
We're on the record.
Oh, I know.
Pays the rent, right?
How about you, Rachel? How about you?
All right, so I started up on comic books as a kid, so I loved comics my whole life. But one thing I noticed from writing other genre fiction like space opera and whatnot, I became more of a critical reader whenever I read other authors' books. But when it came to superhero fiction, for some reason, like the better I understand any kind of tropes and themes and whatnot in superheroes, I just enjoy reading other superhero stories more. I haven't become jaded like I thought I would on the other genres, and there's no logic to it. Maybe I'm just cray-cray, but I love it. And I still love reading superhero fiction.
Right on. Awesome. So that's kind of cool because it's like when you're an indie author and as you explore your writing ability and you become a better writer, it becomes increasingly difficult to find fiction that you want to read. Because all of a sudden, all you can see is the man behind the curtain moving on the wheels. And even sometimes you're like reading like, I see what you're trying to do there, but you failed. And it just takes you right out of the book. So yeah, I totally get that. All right, this one's easy, I think, maybe. Could start a fist fight, I don't know. Who is better, Marvel or Marvel? No. Who is your most favorite superhero that's popular, and what's your most favorite superhero that people might not have heard of? We'll start with Marion.
Well, Superman from all the way back when a dollar comic was.
Wait, you write a Supergirl series and Superman's your favorite character? I would not have guessed.
Really, he's been reinterpreted so many times that he's really stayed fresh. Sometimes he's kind of wandered away from, but they always pull him back because
Better
they
than
want to
Marvel.
support what the character is. Yeah, so I'd have to go with the big S.
And who is someone maybe that people haven't heard of that you really like?
Sasquatch.
Sasquatch?
Nice.
Applefly. Right on.
To get really niche, there you go.
There you go. Yeah, I know. Brian, how about you?
Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Right on. My favorite episode of Buffy is when she meets that military guy after she's no longer with Angel, and he's fighting her because he thinks he's all BA, and she like punches him across the room, and he's like, "You're Spiderman strong," and I was like, back then, they never got mentioned on TV or movies, ever. So it was kind of cool. How about and someone maybe who's less known?
See, I've been really into Star Trek lately, and a lot of just the weird aliens that would pop up with incredible powers from time to time. I've been hunting down YouTube clips, and there's like the guy who, his whole planet blew up, but he like made his wife again, and he's just chilling with her.
Yeah, that's a great
And it's
episode,
like, that's pretty darn powerful.
Yeah.
And you just like, that was some
I
one-off
killed them all,
episode.
everywhere. That
Yeah.
guy, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good episode. How about you, Charles? Who's your favorite guy?
It's
Or girl?
Superman. Superman is definitely my favorite. I've always just kind of liked the idea of Superman, and I always like one of the alien side of him, but I always like that he tries. He sees the best in humanity, and he tries. Some people say that, he's not relevant. I'm like, no, he is. It's just, the problem is that movies have not done him justice.
They have not done him justice.
Well, since Christopher Reeves, and that worked for them, but it's just like nowadays it's how it goes.
Dawn of Justice.
Yes.
Oh God. So yes.
I think so.
I know.
A lot of justice going on.
Oh, God.
How about somebody lesser known?
I would say I've always been a fan of. I like Domino.
Hey,
Domino's always kind of cool because it's a new crap. I say Domino or like this is gonna go real obscure. Adam X the Extreme. He was supposed to be the third Summers brother, and then things
Right.
changed. And then they got this idiot Vulcan who sucks.
Did he have like a weird helmet?
He had a backwards cap. He was
Yes,
so
I remember
90s,
him.
So 90s,
Yeah.
so 90s.
Did he have pouches?
Oh, I'm sure he did.
All right,
His
how about
pouches
you?
and pouches. The 90s.
Who's your favorite mainstream superhero, and who's somebody who's a little lesser known?
I love so many, but I'll probably go with Doctor Strange just because, I love the comics, but then Benedict Cumberbatch.
I said superhero, not actor.
Doctor Strange. He was
That's a
very good.
superhero right there.
Yeah, he's a very good technical actor. I would say good.
So you're a Benedict?
Hold down.
Yeah.
Hold down.
There's another name, but I
Sorry. Okay, how about somebody who's lesser known?
I would probably go with the ultimate underdog with Longshot.
Oh, I love Longshot!
Nice.
Mojo
A
World.
rebel, yeah, and he kept trying to win. It was one of those just constantly failed rebellions. So you felt sorry for the guy, but he was also so likable and lucky.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
How about you, Jamie Steve?
What's fascinating
Stevie?
is that I think my two now have to be reversed.
Okay.
Over the past year, and I'm just going to throw the two out and maybe you can figure this out. So Black Bolt is my favorite. Black Bolt from the Inhumans.
Yeah.
I love everything about the Inhumans. It's been my favorite property until
I'm so sorry.
what happened. Destroyed my heart when they tried to make that. It was the worst ever. But Black Bolt was my favorite. But now I have to switch because like my lesser known would have been Invincible. Been reading Invincible since it came out.
Nice.
And nobody would listen to me. Go read Invincible, and then they do this TV show, and everyone's like Invincible. So flip those. Nobody knows who Black Bolt is, and Invincible, I guess, is in that spot.
I was all into that show until that girlfriend, and I just
No, I agree.
killed it for me.
It's the comics different.
In a better way.
I feel your pain, brother. I feel your pain.
But it was still
MJ,
it's a great show.
I
Yeah,
feel your pain.
it is what it is.
All right, so this is great. Okay, before I ask the last question, I want to find out if anybody in the audience.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
speak.
This is going to come as absolutely no surprise to anybody but Spider-Man. Peter Parker, the Amazing Spider-Man. Not only did I learn to reading Spider-Man comics, because we lived in Timbuktu in Oregon, and I couldn't get to school in time. It was too far away, so I would get Spider-Man comics, and I wanted to know what was happening so bad, I would learn to read that. And since I've always been kind of a rebel, I'm going to go with my lesser-known favorite superhero team, which is the original New Warriors. I love that team so much. And then they ruined them 3 times.
They've ruined everything.
Yeah, I know, right?
Everything.
And this is why we do
Sad.
this, because we're trying to find superheroes we want to read, and we open up superhero comic books, and they're walls of text, beginning to end. And it's, comics are a visual medium, not a word medium. We are a word medium. So yeah, that's my favorite. So, does anybody have any questions? And if you do, please stand up and speak loudly and keep your mask off.
Hey guys, so because superheroes are such niche, I was wondering what you guys do for marketing.
I'm the wrong person to ask for that, because my marketing was to keep releasing books until I dropped dead from exhaustion.
Yeah, try
I
that.
mean, that's not bad.
So basically, I think one of the things you can do with your books is, aside from newsletter swaps, you also have front matter that promotes your newsletter, basically. That way, it's like you can capture those fans who are coming and possibly finding your books. And then you can also do Facebook ads can be effective to a degree. So I'd recommend that as well. Oh, what about Brian? Yeah, what did Brian say?
Brian, would you perhaps have some insight on marketing?
Here's what I'm gonna say.
And you can totally shill your thing if you want.
Obviously, I talk about Amazon ads on my nonfiction side, and Amazon ads are really helpful for getting the specific keywords of all of these people's titles and making sure that you are targeting the other superhero books. But I'm going to go in a slightly different direction, because you made me think about how, yes, writing more than one book is certainly helpful. You talked about front matter, but I'm going to talk about back matter. So, when your book ends, it should go exactly like this. Period, ornamental break, a link to your next book with a call to action. Not another page, it should be on the very same page. Why do we do this? Because this increases read through. And you do it from 1 to 2, and you can have another ornamental break and an email list sign up with an extra epilogue or something. Just because romance people do it doesn't mean superhero people can't do it. And you get them before they even turn the page, because they are the hottest potential reader for book 2.
Yes.
Right at that moment that they end on that last period. If you even go to the next page, or you have 40 links on the next 3 pages, it's not going to work as well as getting them right when they are the hottest. So the best marketing is fix up the back of your book.
And Brian, this is data driven, right? This is not your guessing.
This
You
is
know
very
this.
data
This is
driven,
very data
yes.
driven. So listen to this man. When it comes to marketing, there are very few people who are better at it than he is.
Can I just say that that was going to sound horrible. I'm going to say it anyway. So as good as those answers are, that doesn't tell you how to sell your first book.
Yeah, that's true.
Because until you sell that first book, nobody sees your front or back matters. So I think your step number 1, Jeff mentioned this, you've got to have a cover that fits the market.
Yes.
And I would suggest, because as Rhett and I own a publishing company, we know what authors think are a good cover versus what a good cover is. Do not trust your instincts
Yes.
immediately. And maybe you're great, maybe you do know what you're doing, but go to that top 100. Go to the best-selling superhero fiction that you can find, and ignore the outliers, because there's going to be the black cover with the yellow letters that says Batman, right? Like, that's not a cover.
You're not Batman.
You're not Batman. You've got to hit the readers where you want to hit them. They need to know what kind of a story it is based on the cover. Mine is very much everything Marvel and DC has ever done, because my books are Marvel and DC driven. If you like those things, you're going to like Marvel. You're going to like the Raptor series. So you got to start with your cover. You got to go to your blurb, because I believe this is the order in which things go. You've got your cover, which draws them in and causes them to stop scrolling. Then you've got the blurb, your description, right? If your description doesn't catch them, they're not going to the look inside to read that first paragraph, right? It used to be going to the store, see the cover, take it off, look at the back, read the back, open it, read the first page. It's not that anymore. It's digital. So for me, the cover is your first step in marketing.
Yeah.
And get it everywhere, but don't do it in such a way where it's just you randomly posting your cover on every social media. No one cares about your cover that much, right? Like, they don't know what it is. You got to talk to them. You got to let them know what it is, why you're doing what you're doing, and then find folks maybe like us or other folks that swap newsletters.
I have some of you guys already. So.
Yeah,
I'd like to
number
point
one.
out that superhero, when Rhett said that superheroes is a niche market, it is a niche market. Because your target audience are not people who went and saw Marvel movies. And your target audience are not people who read urban fantasy. Your target audience are people who love comic books, right? Love superheroes, and read fiction. And even know that superhero fiction exists. So, and outside of Marvel and DC. So it's a niche audience.
And
So
granted-
you really got to drill it down.
And granted, some of them might watch the movies, but they're comic book fans first.
Yeah.
That's the core thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I thank you for correcting me. The problem with front matter, back matter is way more important than front matter, because a lot of times when people open your book, it will go directly to the first chapter. It won't go to the front matter. So when you're doing the back matter especially, it's not just having the back matter, I mean that's important of course, but you also want to make sure it's a chapter as well. That way people can even just go to it directly when they look at the outline, they look at the table of contents.
Marion?
Just a last note, nobody here has mentioned pricing. I don't think I would have done what I did if I had started a $7.99 paperback or Kindle that nobody knew who I was, nobody knew what it was about. And my first cover sucked, I might add, because I only had $100 to pay for somebody for the cover.
Thank God for 2011.
By the end of the first year, I put down a solid $1,000 on my second cover, which is the one you just saw. You know, I
Which is
recovered
awesome.
it. Which it's actually had a blog where they just cited the cover. They weren't interested in the book. They wanted to talk about the cover. But 99 cents a book on your first book, if nobody knows you, it's a great way to spam it out there. And then you better have a really good book, because you're gonna rise or fall on the star ratings.
Yeah, because it's the first book, and that's why it's so important to have like at least a trilogy, because the first book is going to be possibly a loss leader if you price it at 99 cents. Now you don't have to keep it at 99 cents after you kind of really start getting momentum. When you first get out there, you got to draw them in. So be okay. You're gonna have to be okay with losing some money on book one.
Book one is now down to $2.99 in my series now. But I have 8 books behind it that are $7.99.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
No, it's fine.
I'm just getting into this. I don't come from the same background that you guys do with comic books. I started with the movies. And so for me, I'm building a vigilante universe. So I was curious, which vigilantes do you guys like the best? And then I can start reading and digging into my research based on those recommendations, perhaps.
Raptors.
Yes, it is on the list.
I would say Vigilante. I mean, Batman is very oversaturated.
Yeah.
But I would
Still
say
cool.
it's still cool, but it's too much.
Yeah.
I'd say watch Daredevil on Netflix.
Season 2.
Yeah.
specifically.
Yeah, season
Okay.
2. Season 1 is good if you're kind of maybe building from the ground up, and I'd say even watch Arrow seasons 1 and 2.
I love Arrow. Yes, that's
There you
one of my
But more
favorites.
importantly, I would read some vigilante fiction because
Yes,
it's out there.
that's what I want. Can I
Also, I'm going to mention Larry again here. His Monster Hunter is almost a vigilante story because it's this guy who goes after werewolves and vampires with a passion and a shotgun.
Also, hard magic is
And
they're
hard magic,
basically
yeah.
superheroes.
So
Hard
yeah,
magic,
not basically
vigilante
superheroes.
superheroes. 1930s.
But yeah, so seek out fiction before you seek out movies and TV shows because here's the problem with movies and TV shows. They are two-dimensional.
Right.
And fiction is three-dimensional, and we write fiction. We don't write movies on book, in book form. We write books, and it's a very different medium. Just FYI.
Also, you said before, the people who watch the movies aren't necessarily going to be readers.
Yeah, if you want to know the difference, listen to people who are bitching about the movies.
Yeah.
And then you know that those are
I almost forgot to
Yeah.
mention one last thing. The original Watchmen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Kind of follow Rorschach's story, and even take a look at how the owl was kind of working, like what made him come back. What were the stories around him? Just a lot of the men in their original days.
I would throw Rex the Roach out
Yes,
there.
I was going to mention that. Yeah.
Anyway, the
Push
Roach.
dark. And if you
It's
want
super dark, it's vigilante.
Yeah.
No holds barred vigilante.
and
Sir, back
I
here.
think because it is such like a lot of people's portal of entry, if they're not into superhero fiction yet, is a visual medium, whether it's a movie, whether it's a TV series like The Boys, or whether it's a comic or a graphic novel that they've read. Do you guys do anything to try to convert people into fiction at all?
Well, I'd say with my Facebook ads, I will target people who are interested in movies.
Absolutely.
But I also make sure that they're also interested in, ebooks.
The problem is with Facebook, you have a very limited number of targetable things.
Yeah.
Right? So like I don't know, CC's books might not be on Target.
It's gotta be like that.
No, you can. The only superhero novels I've ever found at Target were Brandon Sanderson's, and as we mentioned earlier, they're not really superhero novels.
Right.
So much.
But if you can target the TV shows and the movies, and
readers.
people own a Kindle.
Kindle. Yep.
I just
Brian's
one thing
actually
I was
there.
going to follow up on that because one way that I've seen some superhero authors make sales that aren't based on their fiction is to set up a Kickstarter for a comic. And so that is certainly a way to get their email addresses and certainly to get them into the fiction world. And I think that I've seen some authors actually make more money on their comic book Kickstarters than on their fiction. And if there's something that's working better, you obviously try to double down on that. And
My
see
RPG
if that can
Kickstarter
help.
was great for that.
Yeah.
You're buying a lot of new readers.
Why don't you tell us about that?
It was an RPG Kickstarter.
That is all I needed. That's
All right, Sarah,
I
then.
can tell you later.
I was actually hoping.
Could you,
sorry. Actually, I was kind of hoping to add another thing to the answer to that. I've made over 1,000 sales going to comic book conventions selling my books. So that's if you want to get people to be passionate to jump into superhero literature, show up at cons, put
Yeah,
posters
that's a
up
good one.
there. That is a great way to get readers that didn't even know that the genre existed.
Most
David, why don't you talk a little about your series?
Oh,
I'm sorry, David, we don't really have the time. No.
But
But,
on his comment, they have great author alleys and discounts
Yes.
for people who are small artists or small authors to start with at conventions.
He's got a great trilogy, just to let you know. Check it out. It's a villain who becomes a hero.
Last name?
David Reese, I think. It's way good.
Brett knows what
Just
he's.
making sure it was said. That's all.
Tongue thief, that's what
All right, we got time for one more question from the audience, and then we're gonna wrap up with where you can find all these wonderful people. Sir?
Yeah, I'm determined to color outside the lines. So my superhero fiction actually delves into also the epic fantasy world. Can you give us some insights on what you think that might go wrong?
Yeah, can I answer that? So I own a
Yeah,
publishing
absolutely. Okay,
company.
listen. One of the number one indie publishers in the business.
Crossing
Right?
genres is
So
the
listen.
most difficult, and I'm gonna just say worst things you can do if you want to make money. You'll hear a lot of big names. Jonathan Mabry, I recently heard. I think he's actually talking here, and I'm apologize ahead of time because his whole thing is on how crossing genres is the best way. That might be fine for a guy with the name Jonathan Mabry,
But he does it in different books. He
but
doesn't process.
and even so, in the indie world, like crossing genres and mashing things up, there's no way to market that.
Yeah.
Marketing is everything. Visibility is everything. And if you can't market a book, no one will ever see the book. So if it is a superhero epic fantasy mashup, which I would go back to Marion, the city in a superhero, the city's a character. And you'll hard pressed to find any successful superhero fiction that doesn't take place in the city. Because it's been established for 70 years.
Even if it's a medieval city.
Even if it's a medieval city, because I'll tell you right now, I love superheroes. I won't read a superhero fiction in.
Sure.
And that's just me being honest.
And here's the thing is, you're not gonna get epic fantasy readers because they are not interested in superheroes.
Right.
And you're not gonna get superhero readers because they're not interested in fantasy.
Sure.
Bear in mind, authors have very eclectic tastes when it comes to reading. Because we read a lot. I mean, right? We read a lot. Readers read one or two genres, and that's it. And they don't ever go outside the streams.
What was your name?
Oh, I'm Alan.
Alan?
Yes.
I just want to encourage you though, like, if money's not the goal, do whatever you want.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
done.
Passionately do whatever you
Yeah.
want. But if money's the goal, man, that's going to be hard.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard stuff. Okay, so real quick, we'll wrap up. Does anybody have any final comments they'd like to share, Rachel?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Steve?
Nope.
Cece?
I would say go with what you're passionate about, but if you're getting advice from somebody who's selling, listen to them.
Brian?
Something my Summer Book Show co-host Claire said to me that sticks with me is, if you're writing a scene and it's not fun, take it out of the book and then write something awesome.
Good advice. Marion?
Ignore the bad reviews unless it's more than 10% of them, in which case they might have something. We might want to.
That's good.
I will add that this being an author is a journey. All right? And if you are not always striving to be better than you were yesterday, you are being worse than you were yesterday. And it is a lot of hard work, but it's got to be the hard work in the right direction. And real quick, everybody who has a published superhero novel right now who's sold a lot of books, could you please stand up? I'm looking at you, Justin. So come see these people, right? Come see these people. Everybody I know in the superhero community, everybody I know has been more than happy to be helpful to everybody else. All right, so reach out to us, those of us who sell, and find out what works. And if you really want to be successful as a superhero author, listen to what these people have to say, because they know why their books sell. And a lot of people don't know why their books sell. And the difference is we will continue to sell books, and other people will not. So, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.